Ladies and gentlemen, Homecoming Director Mary Kramer.
Good morning. Good morning to our homecoming guests here live at the Mike Ilitch School of Business, and also people who are attending by live stream. This is our second and last formal day of programming, and I just want to preview a little bit about what we're going to be doing today. First, we're going to be talking to Jim Farley about the electrifying future of the automotive industry and how it plays out here in Detroit. We're going to talk about wealth inequality with Andre Perry, the author of Know Your Price. Then a very special treat. The Boys and Girls Club of Southeast Michigan has a teen industry group that will be showing what they do, which includes designing fashions, and we'll have a little impromptu fashion show here. We have philanthropy innovators. We have Art Bilger from Working Nation talking about some of the workforce issues, serious workforce issues, certainly that play out here in Detroit as well as the rest of the country. And as we will close, as we began on Thursday night with Black Bloc, with a session on the arts. I just want to take a moment to thank the sponsors. We've had the logos on the screens since Thursday afternoon, and you know, the sponsors really took a risk here by doing a live event and to offer live stream options as well. It was just really a big bet that we needed to keep Detroit Homecoming going. And based on the conversations I've had with many of you between Thursday afternoon and last night at the DIA with D-Electricity, it is worth it. People are making connections. They're doing things in Detroit. They're doing things for Detroit. And that's what Detroit Homecoming is all about. So I want to thank you very, very much. Thank you. Now we're going to welcome our next guest and speaker. I'm going to be doing the fireside chat with Jim Farley, who took over the CEO role at Ford Motor Company in October 2020. We're going to be talking about a lot of his initiatives, including some new talent hires that have been remarkable and are going to be game changers for the Ford Automotive Company. He has, if you've noticed the stock price has been going up, and a lot of investment in electrification, but also a lot of thought behind other issues, secondary issues in workforce and other issues that relate to the working people who have helped to make our automotive company so great. So please welcome Jim Farley.
Everyone.
So Jim, I know GM makes a big deal about being, and we're grateful to General Motors. They've been a big supporter, but I gotta note that they are headquartered here, but you are probably the only automotive head who actually lives in the city of Detroit.
Yeah, I think so. I live in the Vinton, Congress and Woodward, have for many years, and I love living downtown. It's changed a lot because of COVID, and it's amazing to me when I go to work. I've never actually met my leadership team in person, all of them, but when we get together, it's amazing to me how little people know in the suburbs what's actually going on in Detroit, because my experience living here is almost totally different than the suburban people I work with. So
maybe we should have you lead a tour sometime.
Yeah. My uncle, my great uncle, lived in the Book Cadillac for most of his life. So I guess I'm following that tradition.
Oh, that's great. That is great. And I know that everybody, I'm always interested to know people who are in the auto industry, what is it that they drive? Because you can drive anything. What do you drive?
My daily driver is a 1973 Bronco. Totally bone stock from Arizona, about 55,000 miles. All I did is vintage factory installed air conditioning. And that's my car.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So I mentioned General Motors, and certainly one of the big things that we saw yesterday in a walking tour of the riverfront is just those of us who remember the cement silos and then and parking lots on the river, and what GM and others have invested in creating a beautiful river walk that has been named #1 in the country in many polls. But now Ford is investing on the other side of downtown.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about what attracted you to the train station. Why was that a big bet for the company?
A couple of reasons. I mean, it was Bill Ford's personal vision, I would say. I think we're all fed up with the kind of deterioration porn that you see in the media about Detroit at that time. And I think we're all kind of fed up and about what happened to the train station. And like my grandparents, they were so proud of being from Detroit. I think it was just an odd, someone had to step up.
Mm-hmm.
It's also, we were at the same time making the commitment to completely transform all our buildings for our employees in Dearborn, and we had just moved our autonomous and EV team medicine downtown to the brass factory, and so it just made sense for us to take this on. And now it's turned into a totally different project. It's a mobility innovation center, and between Ann Arbor and the train station, we're going to set up kind of an autonomous highway, let's say, with dedicated infrastructure. So we can really start testing, pulling the driver and really testing autonomy and other mobility services. I'm so proud. I've been to the train station. I know you guys had the dinner there a couple of years ago. What's happened since then, and also the book depository and all the other buildings that we're restoring around there. It's going to be incredible. We start putting people in at the end of next year, and then the train station the next year. And at the same time, we're spending more than $1 billion renovating our entire R&D out in Dearborn. And that's what you have to do to attract the best people.
Yeah. Well, and that's actually kind of you're echoing what Dan Gilbert said when he came down in 2010 and bought the first building. He interviewed some young person at his office in Livonia and was trying to get this person to come to work for the company. And the job candidate said, my idea of my future is not looking at the roof of the Costco across the street.
Right.
So it was a talent play as well. Yeah. So we had a speaker a couple of years ago who Tony Fidel, and he's from Detroit. And his claim to fame was being the lead engineer on the iPod, and then founding the company Nest and selling the company Nest, which made him a very wealthy guy. But he's an auto enthusiast, and he's also a Detroit enthusiast. And his recommendation at the time was that Detroit automakers needed to understand Silicon Valley better. That Silicon Valley's conceit was that they just thought of everything as a software problem, and they thought it would be so easy to build a car. But he also had this recommendation that Detroit use its space, because we got 139 square miles, to be a test track. And you just described what you're going to be doing on Michigan Avenue. It has a name, I think, CAVNU. Can you talk a little bit about that connectivity?
We're raising money with a couple of technology companies who want to create a autonomous corridor between downtown, Corktown specifically, and Ann Arbor. It's right on the way, Michigan Avenue, on the way to Dearborn. So we have lots of employees going back and forth, and we're really interested. There's so many. Autonomy's taking longer than we thought, but we still have to solve the second order problems, like do we have dedicated infrastructure for autonomous vehicles, et cetera, et cetera. I think this is a way for us to really solve some of those problems, which we have to solve. And I don't think we should wait to regulators to make up their mind. We have to solve this as companies. I think it's going to be a great canvas for us. To turn Michigan Avenue into, because it's a very Michigan Avenue goes through so many different cultures, so many different it's actually a fantastic road in that way. It's a perfect problem to solve with autonomy.
And you got 1 million square feet or thereabouts in the train station. What are you looking at to do there?
So it's quite interesting, because when we bought the train station, Mary Culler would say, who's been in charge of the program, it's a building, and maybe the book depository is a building. And then we quickly realized, holy cow, the real opportunity is actually the whole space around it, not just Roosevelt Park, but what do we do behind it where all the train tracks used to be? And people don't realize it's only a couple of miles to the riverfront. the riverfront down there near the bridge is going to be also renovated into a whole new river walk. And for someone who lives downtown, I actually prefer to run that side of river instead of going up to Grosse Pointe, because it's much more interesting. And so we have this green belt right from the train station right down to this new Riverwalk extension. And that's going to be a huge park. So I think the outdoor, well, we don't really want to go into the details, but we have some fantastic plans, not just for innovation for mobility, but for the community. We want this to be a space where people can go and watch an outdoor movie, do great events, and we're going to invest in the property itself and work with the team to connect it to the river.
I love your reference to community, and I get my hair cut in Corktown, so good. I always hear good things about the investment and how the neighborhood perceives Ford there. But one of your passion projects and mission projects, I don't think a lot of people really know about your engagement with the Pope Francis Center, what it is, and this issue of homelessness in Detroit, which is an issue certainly in some of the larger cities around the country. Could you talk a little bit about why you're involved and what you're doing with the Pope Francis Center?
My grandparents were really dedicated Detroiters. They were very proud and they were very involved in Catholic charities. So when I moved to the city, I made a list of all of in my family, you know, the expectation is if you do well or you have an important job, you know, you get back. So I listed all the things: boxing center, you know, capuchin, soup kitchen, blah, blah, blah. And I started to interview all the people. When I met Father Tim, he just kind of blew me away, frankly. I'd actually volunteered there when I visited here. I grew up overseas, but when I came to Detroit to visit my grandparents, we actually had gone to Pope Francis Center decades ago. So I kind of knew about what they do, but I wasn't prepared to hear his vision and how Detroit could lead in really solving homelessness. I came from Santa Monica. Santa Monica homelessness was totally out of control. I think it's now moved to Venice, but you know, it's clearly the leaders of Santa Monica didn't have a solution. And so much of California was that way when I left. So his vision, he benchmarked around the country homelessness root cause solutions. And he could only find one place in San Diego that really had transition from people. And so he started designing, I think will be America's most innovative transition center for homeless people. All we do in society is put Band-Aids for these people. We feed them, we deal with their, you know, medical addiction issues, their psychosis, and we just put Band-Aids on them as a society. And the government can't do it. So the idea is in Corktown. It looks like we found the property. It was funny to see how few people wanted to be in their neighborhood, but finally we found a place, and it's gonna be quite large. It's a $22 million project. We're almost funded it, and it's gonna be a full transition. So if people wanna sleep on the sidewalk, most homeless people choose to live. They don't wanna live inside. They have a place where they won't get beat up, and they'll still have their independence. We'll have a gym, we'll have medical, we'll have mental health, we'll have addiction, we'll have faith, and they can kind of deal with getting their life back on track. And the last metric is whether they live inside, the absolute last one. Deal with them as a whole people. Because the homeless population in Detroit, you know, they really decide to live outdoors. The population isn't so big, we can really solve this. And I'm super excited, and how great would it be another example of Detroit really leading the country.
I had never heard of a homeless program. Yeah, right. That met the people where they are. If they want to stay outside, they're going to be in a safe environment. That's remarkable.
Sidewalks, whatever they want.
Wow, that's remarkable. I want to talk a little bit about electrification.
Sure.
And you know, sometimes it irritates me as a Detroiter when I read the financial press and I'm reading about all the technology and all the other things, and the lack of respect in some ways that Wall Street has for automakers, the industry as a whole, when in fact, how many billions of dollars are going into transforming the business. Your stock price is doing pretty well since you took over. How do you look at that? Do you think you get enough respect for the change in the industry? You are spending a lot of time selling your vision. How is that going?
Well, I think it's going well at Ford. I mean, we're not talking about aspirations. The Mach-E is out. It's completely sold out in Europe, in the US, in China. The most popular vehicle in the US is the F-150. Has been for 40 years. And we electrified the F-150, built here in the Rouge in a zero-emission plant. And if you haven't been there, you should go. It's pride of Detroit. My grandfather worked at the Rouge. And it's an amazing facility. The president was there, best test driver ever, by the way. We have 150,000 orders. And the truck isn't just it isn't just fast. It is very fast, 0 to 60 in 4 seconds, but it can power your house for 3 days. I think this will really change electrification. But we started 10 years too late. I mean, Bill Ford had a vision for this 20 years ago. And whatever reason, he's got a management team that gets it. And that beautiful truck is sold out for probably 2 years now. And so we have a lot of work to do to break those constraints. But I think we're on the right path because the first generation of electric owners, they don't want small commuter, very reasoned economy cars. They want the good stuff. They want Mustangs. They want pickup trucks. They want utility vans. They want the best products. And Tesla's been doing it for 10 years. Tesla in the second quarter made $1 billion on 200,000 units. We made $1.1 billion. If you take out their stock, compensation, selling credits to other OEMs, they made about $1 billion. We made $1 billion on 700,000. And we don't have a $15,000 battery in our vehicles. So, good for them. It's a great American company. I think we'll do really well with our products. We've had to attract a lot of new talent. In 2007, Motorola, BlackBerry, Nokia were 90% of mobile phones. The most important engineer in those companies was a radio engineer. 4 years later, Samsung and Apple started dominating the same industry. Those companies almost went away because they didn't invest in an embedded system with cameras, a gyroscope, whatever. And people started using the phone as a computer, not as a calling device. The same thing is going to happen with cars. And Tesla was the first company to invest in an embedded system to really, that's updatable to make the product better every year. So from my standpoint, we have a lot of work to catch up to. As far as Wall Street, I don't worry too much. We've allocated the capital. I think they're starting to realize, hey, these are good companies. They have good people, and they could win. But we definitely have not been recognized. Lucid's worth $42 billion. I don't think they've produced a vehicle yet. Rumors that Rivian will go public. Whatever, $70, $80 billion. We're worth 55 on Friday, yesterday. Is there upside? Yeah, there's upside. And what's really interesting is a new talent is coming to Ford. What they say to me is, can you give all my compensation in stock? That's pretty cool.
That is a telling thing.
That's pretty cool.
And speaking of talent, the announcement about Doug Field, I don't want to speak for you in terms of who he was, but he worked at Apple. He was part of Apple. He was part of Tesla. You've got somebody with a target on his back.
It's not just Doug. I mean, Doug is an amazing world-class engineer. By the way, his grandfather worked at Packard. It's a 1926 Packard.
Wow.
He engineered the Segway as a young engineer, quit Ford. It's too bureaucratic. Didn't really like the mission. And then he went to Apple as a software engineer. And then he went to Tesla for 5 years. He was the head of engineering. He engineered the Model 3 and the Model Y. He then went to Apple, secret project. And I've been talking to Doug for 8 months now, personally. And no one knows more about these embedded software and hardware systems than Doug. as well as electronic components, partial autonomy. He's a huge win for Ford. And he came here for one reason. He believed in our plan. He trusted Bill and I think, but he came here because he wants to change the world. And he thinks that a company like Ford, it's very important that we prosper in this digital age. And he's willing to sacrifice it all to do that. And it's not just Doug. Mike Amends came from Home Depot and Lowe's, our customer-facing software. He knows a lot about e-commerce. He's written some of the biggest e-commerce platforms in our country. Susie Deering came from eBay. Before that, she was at Verizon, the same industry that went through this embedded revolution. We have so much. Steve Crowley came from the US government. You know, more than half my leadership team is brand new. And they came because they're volunteers.
They're volunteers.
They're volunteers. They believe that Ford is a kind of company. They want to be involved in the redesign for the next 100 years.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Sure.
Those are great hires. Now, talking about electric, you said that the buyers really want the good stuff. You've got orders for F-150s, but average Americans, to make this transition to an electric vehicle, they have concerns about batteries. They have concerns about charging. They have concerns about fires with batteries. Where do you see the public education and where this market will go to get the mass, not the early adopters, but the mass?
It's going to take a long time. We have a lot of work to do on cost. I think all that is on us. It's all that is on us to solve, but we have to solve it with government, local communities. Customers have to be able to sell the electrons back to the grid. We got to solve the labor issues. These vehicles are much simpler. They break much less. There's a huge impact on labor. So as far as charging and adoption is concerned, all you need to do is look at Norway. Norway's been 50% all electric for more than 5 years now, almost 10 actually. It's one of the biggest markets for us at Mach-E. I think it's their second biggest market globally is Norway. Customers, if you give them good product, if the government steps on the scale of the economics for customers will switch. Then you have to solve the charging and all the other issues for them. I think today it's not a big issue. 10% in December, 12% of the entire European auto industry was pure electric. Another 10% was plug-in. So 1 out of every 5 vehicles being sold today in Europe has a plug. So customers are moving when governments make it worth it, and we're starting to see real interest and real commitment on the U.S. government's side to make this happen. But we have to work through these other issues. But for most people, I'm deeply worried about the affordability of this move. The average transaction price for Ford, most people would have no idea. If I surveyed the group, our average price paid is about $50,000. We're not so far away from BMW. Average people cannot afford these vehicles. And we have a lot of work to do to make them more affordable. That's the one that keeps me up at night. The charging, those kind of things, customers are smart. We'll figure it out. We're learning a lot about charging with Mach-E. We have the biggest charging network, but a lot of them are broken. Some of them aren't, most of them aren't fast charging. Fast charging, you can fill up 80% in about 20 minutes. So fast charging really works great, but there's not enough fast chargers. So it's going to take a lot of work by everyone. Most Americans have 2 or 3 cars in their household, the rich ones at least. And so it's not issued. You charge at home, charge at work, you're pretty much good if you have 2 other cars to take a long trip on. But to really get in the mainstream adoption, we have to solve affordability, to me, is the biggest one.
And the secondary issues that you've talked about with this whole move of the transformation of the industry,
Yes.
Labor, recycling,
Yes.
Mining.
Yes.
You want to talk a little bit about where you think we need, what are the problems we need to solve, and some of the ideas that thinking can work.
Okay. Thank you for bringing this up because I wish it was discussed more, Mary, and I don't know why it isn't. You know, it's like everyone's watching all the companies, how much capital they're allocating. You know, well, that's necessary but not sufficient. We're going to spend $30 billion. We'll be all electric in Europe in a couple of years. So the companies made the commitment to change over our factories, our supply chain, and our vehicles. We're going to have lots of electric choices. But there's these second and third order problems that no one's talking about that we have to solve, as you said. The first one is labor. Doesn't matter if it's the dealerships, our assembly workers, these vehicles take 20 or 30% less labor. And, you know, we can't just walk away from that. At least at Ford, we're not going to. So, yes, we can insource batteries, power electronics, you know, e-axles, which we're doing. The electric motors for the F-150 are going to be made in Van Dyke right here. And they were making transmissions 2 years ago. So that's exciting, but that can only do so much. You got to have the batteries moved to the US. All the battery chemistry and know-how is in Asia. We didn't invest in the US. We had some options, but they weren't competitive. So now we have to bring battery production here. But the supply chain has to go all the way to the mines. That's where the real cost is. And people in the US don't want mining in their neighborhood. So are we going to import the lithium and cobalt from, you know, nation states that have child labor and have all sorts of corruption? Or are we going to start to get serious about mining in North America? Do we buy all of our nickel from Canada? Or do we want to buy our lithium from the Salton Sea? We have to solve these things. And we don't have much time. We invested in Redwood because we think this is a recycling company that really knows what they're doing. It was started by JB, one of the founders of Tesla. He's really got a great system. We think we'll scrap some high percentage of batteries when we're making them. We don't want to just throw them away. We want to use the slurry, all the rare metals, recycle those so we can make more batteries. Because the minerals are very expensive. And I don't want to transport them halfway around the world, which is currently the plan. There's quite a few of these kind of issues that we can't solve as an individual company.
Well, I know you've invested also in government relations and more focus on public policy.
That's it.
I want to highlight that later this morning, Art Bilger will be speaking about a lot of these labor issues, the founder of Working Nation, which is trying to elevate these issues so more people are talking about them and working to solve them. Let's talk about the idea of your supply chain. If COVID did one thing that was not related to healthcare, I think it's made people more aware of how reliant we are on overseas things we cannot control.
Right.
So do you think this is going to be one of the ways that Washington or regulators, the Biden administration, will look at mining in a different way because of the idea of having more domestic production of things that are critical to you and other companies?
Maybe. Maybe. I hope so. TSMC, the world's largest wafer semiconductor manufacturer in the world, is in Taiwan. And the auto jobs in the United States, we're the biggest employer of auto manufacturing in the US. We're not the biggest company, but we bet on America. So they have 4% of their output goes to auto. All of our semiconductors essentially most of them come from them. Another factory in Japan. So if we want to start building semiconductors here in the US, we can't just spend a lot of money with PR headlines like we're moving semiconductors and here's a wafer. It's more complicated than that. Autos use 25 nanometer or larger semiconductors. Our Super Duties have to work at 40 degrees below zero on the North Slope of Alaska. And so we have different standards than your iPhone. Our feature-rich chips, 80% and 90% of them, are different than other high-tech industries. We have displays that use the smaller chips, but these feature-rich are very specific. They're older, in a way, older technology, but we need them for auto production. These jobs are dependent on them, and we have to move that to the United States. There are great companies like Global Foundries in upstate New York that are committed to these feature-rich semiconductor production, but we need them to invest, and we need the government's support. The investment required for these semiconductors to move them back to the U.S. is enormous. It's like something we've never seen. We've got to build batteries. We've got to build the silicon. Silicon and batteries together, probably 70% of the bill of material for an electric car. So we need them here, and we need access to mines. I think the government is interested, saying the right things, but is a company like Global Foundries going to get the resources in an infrastructure bill to build 25 nanometer or higher feature semis? I hope so. We'll see.
So I want to, in closing, I just want to see if you can give us a preview of what we might be seeing this afternoon. I know you're heading over to the station. We saw some visuals of the Michigan Central, but what's the longer term vision for the Corktown investment? You talked about the river and riverfront, but companies coming into that space and some of the other things that will show that it's not just Ford there, it's going to be a lot of other players.
Yeah, we think a big part of our transition is going to be the software change. Software can't build a body in white. We still need stamping and and welding but software is going to be. I mean, basically, we can improve the car every day.
So, like your iPhone.
Yes.
You're updating your iPhone system. You will be updating your
Mach-E. We just finished our millionth over-the-air update for only 2 vehicles, F-150 and Mustang Mach-E. So, that's where we're going. The customer experience is going to be dramatically better every day through our software. So we need software engineers, really good ones. And software isn't like number of people. It's like you need the best. It's a creative exercise. It's not just like building cars. So we want to attract the best, and that's one of the reasons why we're making this investment. And we really want companies like Google and other software and mobility companies to come down there. We don't want this to be a Ford facility. In fact, I'd be really happy if only 10% of the people there would be Ford. But I want my good Ford software people down there with those kinds of companies. And we'll learn a lot from them, and they'll learn a lot from us. And geez, I can't think of a place in the country where that's happening. So yeah, it's going to be really exciting. Look at the space, but then think about the people. That's what I would recommend to you. And if you're looking at an electric car and you don't live in Michigan, look at the Mustang Mach-E and the F-150 Lightning. Or if you run a business, our E-Transit. We're building them now, and they're hometown vehicles.
Well, thank you very much. I'm pinch hitting this morning for Casey Crane, who was scheduled to do this conversation, but his wife placed in the Mid-America LPGA, I think, Mid-America Amateur Golf event. So he is caddying for her this morning. And so, and Jim can totally relate to that. So his mother was a pro golfer. So I just want to thank you so much, Jim, for spending the time with us and showing us the vision. And we'll get to see that this afternoon. Every tour that you've signed up for will take you to the Michigan Central, so you can see the excitement that Jim has described this morning.
Thank you, Mary. And thank you for the opportunity to be here with all of you and all the people online. It's really a treat. I'm so proud of Ford, the progress we're making, and more importantly, Bill and all the employees deserve, a whole different company. And we haven't had this opportunity to create value and reinvent the company since we scaled the Model T downtown to Detroit. And if there's one thing that I would recommend you do if you're interested in cars, is go to a battery factory. I think you will be amazed at the future of our industry, because that's ground zero for our digital transformation. That and the software people. And when you go to that battery plant, you think about what a transmission engine plant used to be, you'll go, oh, I get it.
Well, thank you very
Sure.
much. Thank you.